This video is going to be covering on Workbook Exercise 11A for question 2, 3, 4 and 5 only. This is all catering to Chapter 11.1 on Pythagoras Theorem. So in 11.1, we have covered how the Pythagoras Theorem actually works. So just to do a very quick recap about Pythagoras Theorem, the formula that we are generally looking at is this c squared equals to a squared plus b squared, where Pythagoras Theorem, first of all, must be limited to a right angle triangle only. So having a right angle triangle, will we then be able to identify that C is actually the hypotenuse? Because for all other types of triangle, we will not be able to find out where is the hypotenuse, since the hypotenuse only comes about for when it is opposite the right angle. So now that we have actually understood the Pythagoras Theorem, okay, in order to solve most questions, we generally follow through these guidelines, which is step 1, to find out, okay, to identify where is the hypotenuse. So after identifying where is the hypotenuse, we will then go on to actually use the Pythagoras Theorem and form an equation for us to solve. So after we have applied the Pythagoras Theorem, then after that, lastly, we just have to simply solve the equation to find out what is the unknown. So let us now move on to question 2a, okay? So in question 2a, right, it says to find out the value of the unknown, and in this case, the unknown is a, okay? So let's go through the steps. First step is to identify where is the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90-degree angle. So that means that A is actually the hypotenuse. So now that we have identified the hypotenuse, then we make use of the Pythagoras Theorem to identify that A squared equals to the remaining two sides, okay, the square of the remaining two sides. So we get 5 squared plus 12 squared. Using our calculator, we get 169. Then take note that we are trying to find out the value of A and not A squared. So that's why we need to take square root, okay, positive square root 169 and also negative square root 169. Don't forget that A is actually a length, so that's why we got to reject negative 13. Therefore, the answer for A will be A equals to 13. Taking a look at part B now, okay, first step, identify the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse will be this B over here because it is opposite the right angle 90 degree. So if we will have B squared equals to the square of the remaining two sides, 12 squared plus 16 squared, and we get it to be equals to 400. Take positive square root as well as negative square root, and then we have the answer 20 or negative 20, and we reject negative 20. So this is the answer for part B. Now in part C, once again, we will identify where is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is opposite the right angle 90 degree, so C is the hypotenuse. Then using the Pythagoras Theorem, we will get C squared equals to 12 squared plus 35 squared, because 12 and 35 are the remaining two sides. Pressing into calculator, we get 1369. C is equals to the square root of 1369 or the negative square root 1369. Therefore, the answer will be 37 or negative 37, remembering to reject negative 37. We now take a look at part D. Part D has the triangle slightly rotated, but it really doesn't matter because as long as we know where the 90 degree is, we will be able to find where is the hypotenuse, and that will be D. So using the Pythagoras Theorem, we will form the equation D squared equals to 7 squared plus 9 squared. Using my calculator, I will get 130. D is going to be the positive square root 130 or the negative square root 130. Then I do my truncated 5SF over here. Then after that, I round off my answer to be 3 significant figures and I reject the negative value as well. We now take a look at question 3, where we want to find out the value of the unknowns as well. So in question 3a, the unknown that we are going to be finding is actually this value a over here. So we go through the same steps in first identifying the hypotenuse. 90 degrees is over here, so the hypotenuse will be opposite it, which is 26. So we will form using the Pythagoras theorem, whereby 26 square is equals to a square plus 10 square. Okay, then after that I need to find out what is a square, so I move this plus 10 square over to the left, and hence I will have 26 square minus away 10 square, which is why I have this over here. So a square equals to 26 square minus 10 square. Using my calculator, I get 576, and then the positive square root and the negative square root of that answer, I will have 24 or negative 24, and I must remember to reject the negative answer. And now in part B, I am trying to find out what is the value of b. But we always find out what is the hypotenuse first. So the hypotenuse is opposite the right angle, which is here, and therefore hypotenuse opposite it, opposite 90 degrees will be 10. So using my Pythagoras theorem, I will form the equation 10 square equals to 6 square plus b square. Then I move the 6 square to the left. That will mean that 10 square minus 6 square equals to b square. That is why I have b square equals to 10 square minus 6 square. Using my calculator, I will get 64, and b is equals to the positive square root 64 or else the negative square root 64. Therefore, my final answer is 8 and rejecting the negative 8. Now in question 3c, we are given this triangle. So we first identify where is the hypotenuse, and that is opposite the right angle. So 29 is the hypotenuse. And then using my Pythagoras theorem, I will have 29 square equals to 20 square plus c square. Shifting 20 square over to the left, we will have 29 square minus away 20 square. So c square equals to 29 square minus 20 square. Therefore, I will get 441. So c is equals to the positive square root of 441. Otherwise, the negative square root of 441. Likewise as before, we will reject the negative 21 because length cannot be negative. Therefore, my answer will be c equals to 21. So now in part D, we once again find out where is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. Right angle is here. Opposite it, we will have 13 to be the hypotenuse. Hence, using the Pythagoras theorem, we form the equation 13 square equals to d square plus 11 square. Shifting the 11 square to the left, I will have 13 square minus 11 square equals to d square. So 13 square minus 11 square is equals to 48. Finding out the value of d, I will need to take square root, positive square root as well as the negative square root. We will find that the value isn't a whole number, so we have to do truncated 5SF, which is 6.9282, as well as the negative version. And then finally, the final answer, I need to make it 3 significant figures. Hence, I round off to be 6.93 and I reject the negative answer. Now that we have settled the basics by solving question 2 and question 3, we will now take a look at question 4, where we are given 2 right angle triangles inside one another. So we have triangle PQS, okay, and R lies on QS such that we have the respective dimensions as shown in the diagram. we want to first find out what is the length of PQ. To find the length of PQ, which is over here, I will rely on the smaller right angle triangle. Why is it that I will rely on the smaller right angle triangle? So if I were to rely on the bigger right angle triangle over here, I will not be able to use my Pythagoras theorem because I do not know the length of this side. Okay, neither do I know the length of this side. I only know that this side is actually 6 plus 4 and that is 10. If I have two unknowns, I will not be able to solve using my Pythagoras theorem immediately. So I need to find another way, and the other way is to use the smaller right angle triangle. So the smaller one refers to this. And in this right angle triangle, I have 10 for this hypotenuse and I have 6 for this side of the triangle. Since I mentioned that 10 is the hypotenuse, the reason is because it is opposite the 90 degrees. So using my Pythagoras theorem, I get 10 square equals to 6 square plus PQ square. Then I shift the 6 square to the left and I will have 10 square minus 6 square, which is equals to PQ square, which is why I get this formula here. 10 square minus 6 square is 64, and then after that I take square root, the positive square root as well as the negative square root. I will get the answer 8 or negative 8, but we reject negative 8. So this will be the answer for part I. Now what about in part 2, where we want to find out the length of PS? So PS is the other unknown over here. To find out this unknown, we will make use of the bigger right angle triangle. So why is it that I need the bigger right angle triangle? Am I able to solve using this smaller triangle instead? I am not able to use this triangle because it is not a right angle triangle. Since it is not a right angle triangle, I cannot use my Pythagoras theorem. So I must only focus on right angle triangle, and that is only if I look at this, such that I can include my length PS. So since I'm trying to find out what is this, let me think about the rest of the sides of the triangle. Do I know the length of this side? The answer is yes, because I have already found out in part I that this is 8 cm long. Then the other side of the right angle triangle, I am able to know what is the length, which is 6 plus 4, and that is 10 cm. So now that I have identified all the different sides of this right angle triangle, I will proceed with using Pythagoras theorem. And that will tell me that PS square, which is the hypotenuse, is actually equals to PQ square plus QS square. This step is not entirely necessary, although you can write it for your own reference. Okay, we know that that is actually referring to 8 square plus bracket 6 plus 4 square. You can of course write 10 square as well. Finally, we get 164 by pressing into our calculator. Then PS is equals to the positive square root of 164 or else the negative square root of 164. We find the truncated 5SF value, and finally, for our final answer, we will round it to 3 significant figures and also reject the negative answer. Hence, the length of PS will be 12.8 cm. We have now come to the last question of this workbook exercise. So we are trying to find out the value of x for this given triangle. The question says that angle QRS is equals to 90 degrees, which is shown over here, and that is very important. Otherwise, we will not be able to form right angle triangles that will allow us to use Pythagoras theorem. So to find out the value of x, we see that x is found within, this particular right angle triangle. But the problem about this right angle triangle that I've highlighted is that this is something that I want to find. However, I do not know what are all these lengths. Hence, I must find out what is this length first in order for me to use my Pythagoras theorem. So, first step is to see what is the length of this. This length is actually the same as this length over here, because the question says that they are of equal length. It is an isosceles triangle, in fact. So, for this particular length, it is found inside this right angle triangle. And in this right angle triangle, I know that this is 5 cm and I know that I have this as 4 cm. So I can apply my Pythagoras theorem to find out what is this. 5 is actually the hypotenuse of this red right angle triangle because it is opposite the 90 degrees. So 5 square equals to 4 square plus QR square is what we will get when we apply Pythagoras theorem. Then we shift 4 square to the left and I will have 5 square minus 4 square, which is equals to QR square. That is equals to 9, and we find that QR is equals to positive 3 or negative 3. Of course, we are talking about length over here, so we reject negative 3. Now that I have already found this is 3 cm, PR will also be 3 cm. So going back to what I have mentioned at the start of the question, we were focusing on this right angle triangle. Can we now find the value of x using Pythagoras theorem? I hope you have an answer to that question. So, using Pythagoras theorem, we see that x is actually the hypotenuse to this yellow right angle triangle. That's why I have x squared equals to 3 square plus 3 square, since the other two sides are of 3 cm. That means that it is equals to 18, and x is the positive or negative square root of 18. Hence, my 3SF answer is 4.24 and also rejecting the negative value. I hope you managed to get the answer to this question.